The Space God Memoirs. Season 3, Episode 9. I stalked through corridors of tall, arched ceilings, supported by curved bronze pillars, the white walls between them etched with hieroglyphic scrawl in numerous ancient languages, the collected holy texts of hundreds of cultures that made up the foundation of the Nayar harmonium, verses alighting as I walked past. I didn't stop to read them, of course. All those old books were easily accessible in the Monad anyway. The presentation of them in the hall was mostly for show. The Nayar oh so proud of their heritage, their origins. And I was here to do some stuff that their pious philosophers might not entirely approve of. I kept my stealth mind flowing, my emotions subdued. I was here doing what I did best, sneaking and spying. That mysterious little furball Suvar had hinted, in an obnoxiously vague manner, that this is where I should go if I wanted to find out the truth of who was really smuggling the Atra away, who was attacking me using the ever-present Nayar tech. Suvar and Ninda had said that this was where the info would be, the data on where exactly the Atra went and to whom. Those two hinted that if there was corruption here, it was from higher up. I figured that meant Overseer Dryafar, or someone involved in the administration, if Suvar and Ninda weren't just scragging with me. I hoped it didn't go higher. The senior Nayar tended to be, powerful. Just like my recent lesson had openly stated, getting more Atra made you stronger, smarter, more capable of altering the world around you, until you were basically a god. That was a power level I didn't particularly want to scrag with. Hopefully our culprit would just be some lowly yug wanting their Atra fix. That was something I had to make sure of. And so I strolled through the entry halls on the first floor of the Archon's tower, making my way towards the back of the building. After a few turns, I once more found myself in that titanic central chamber, where Lumavari's corporeal form was kept while his consciousness dwelt within the local bardo. I peeked again at the titanic body of Archon Lumavari astride his throne, like some grand statue, or an exquisite dead guy put on display for all to see. He had still not awakened, his body lying dormant, while his spirit dreamed half-conscious in the bardo realm. That body was surrounded by 4 Nentail guards, their pikes upright, their forms as still as his. The Archon was above even Dryafar in terms of Atra and power, qualified as a rank 4, beyond attachment to a single body. Yet somehow he had been disabled, all his immensity shut down. To get even close, someone must have had easy access to the Archon. I resumed my walks, turning from the Archon and going right as I left his immense chamber. The Overseer could have been involved, or one of his chiefs, or someone I didn't know about. Someone like me who could remain anonymous, sneak around, or hide their thoughts well enough to scam everyone else. I cut off speculation with a well-trained thought. Not until I had the details. That was the virtue of reason, and also detachment. Don't make assumptions. Don't get caught up in the moment. Step back and observe. And so I did that, pausing as I reached an intersection in the tower corridors. A tall circular lobby where a huge amethyst crystal grew in the middle, the waters of a fountain pouring down its sides. The very sight of it brought to mind the crystal I had found growing out of Agent Tabalnok's discorporated form, still sitting in my room, hidden away. I didn't know if Rayleigh and Burge had gotten word to Aruvus yet, to Zarathra. For now, that thing would need to remain an enigma. I sat down on one of the stone benches, watching as various Nayar made their way down the halls. I had to have a plan. I couldn't just rush into this like some rabid chavrel. Closing my eyes, I delved into the local monadic, its interconnected numinous corridors spreading in every direction. Mentally zooming through those neon tunnels, I glimpsed packets of data arranged in orderly patterns. info on the entirety of the Kucingkecil facility, its layout, life support systems, residency, and every technical detail of what the facility did with the Atra and how it did it. But nothing on the actual Atra streams coming in or going out. That info wouldn't be here, publicly available. I didn't have access to as much of that data as I should have. Sure, I was an observer. Having access to said data would have been scraggin' handy. But nope. If I just had access to Balnak had told me, the bad guys would probably see that I had access, and the jig would be up. They'd be on their guard, probably ditch the whole operation. But I had been given the next best thing. A set of mental spy codes that were basically a backdoor. A hack, to be used discreetly and secretly, in the right location. For security reasons, there were only a few places you could access that data from, and it wasn't out here in the lobby. The easiest one to reach was the Overseer's portal chair, located in an office on the 15th floor. From there, I was certain I could input my backdoor access and find out what I needed to find out. I scanned a 3D map of the tower, zooming in on the room, 15th floor, and its relation to where I sat. The office was currently empty. A quick scan of today's meeting agenda placed Dryfar in a meeting room on level 4, with 7 other Nyar. The meeting was scheduled to last another 20 minutes. That gave me time, but it was still cutting it close. Might as well leave now. I knew my destination, and with the monad's distance calculating features running in my vision, it was easy to determine the quickest way there. I stood up and headed down the hall to my right, beginning with a casual stroll. No need to draw attention to myself. Making sure the patterns of my stealth mind were running in a steady rhythm, I continued down brightly lit corridors, passing by various robed administrators who didn't give me a second glance, until I arrived at one of the tower's elevators, marked with a single rune above its archway. I stepped in and directed it upward, but not to the 15th floor. Whenever anyone took the elevator to the 15th floor, the administrative level, the tower's vocal mind would send Overseer Dryfar a notification. Instead, I got off at the 12th floor. The elevator opened to an unadorned maintenance area, a dimly lit steel corridor that smelled of metal, plastic, and dust. I stepped out and began my brief stroll through there. Translucent tubes were set into the floor, containing masses of nanites that could be seen swimming through, transported from here to various places across the building where they were needed. The hallway rattled with a constant noise, almost like rain, as the mini-bots skittered through the tubes in the billions. An occasional side room were domed structures as tall as my waist, where the little bots came and went, flashes of yellow light coming from within their hive-like interiors. That's where the nanites were maintained, repaired, created, or dissolved. I didn't pay them much attention, hoping they'd do the same for me. I continued, eventually coming to a wider, cube-shaped room, where a multitude of those tubes intersected, some of them opening up into vents. The rain-like skittering was even louder there. I paused, a tension in my neck, a prickle in my gut. It felt like I was being watched. They began to pour from one of the open vents, coasting downward in a silvery cloud, moving around me, beginning to surround me. Could these bots sense me? I was reminded of before, of the various attacks within Kucingkecil. Whether it was the little furries or someone else, the bad guys had a supreme command of Nyar tech. I stood perfectly still, doing my best to remain deep in the stealth mind. The sound of their billions of skittering feet began to grow louder, and the swarm poured through the room. I imagined what it would be like to be devoured by them. The bits of my flesh picked off cell by cell, until there was nothing left of my body whatsoever. I dissolved those thoughts into my meditation. Instead, I broadcast the codes to Balnak had given me, clearance codes, letting the little bots know I was supposed to be here, like a technician or like one of them. As they continued to crawl through the room, the swarm moved around me, heading towards the various pipes that would take them to where they needed to be. As the last of the nanites skittered off, I breathed a sigh of relief. Then I headed on my way. I sent the same code to the door I stopped at, midway down the hall. The unmarked entry opened, revealing a stairwell beyond. This emergency stair was here in the rare case that the nanite systems broke and someone needed to get in and fix them, which happened almost never. The stairwell was just as empty of people as the maintenance floor, Before long, I ascended up 3 sets of stairs and arrived at another unmarked door, which I opened. I stepped out onto the padded red carpets of level 15. Its wide golden halls host to various offices, only one which was important to me. Briefly checking my mental map again, I headed towards it. Periodically, I'd see the Nentail, their silver bodies marching down the halls or standing silent and still with their weapons in hand. Their Leonin-helmed faces were expressionless masks, their eyes aglow with the lights of technology. But no way those silver kitties were seeing me, not in full stealth mind. Neither did the Naiar in the side rooms even turn a glance towards me, enthralled as they were in their various jobs. Soon I was at my destination. The Overseer's office was an oblong chamber built out of a seamless white foamy material. 2 large circular windows provided a panoramic view of Hundexal's inner cityscape. One end of the office was dominated by a yellow soapstone meeting table. At the other end of the room was the portal chair, made of red metal, looking pretty similar to the one in my own quarters. Yup, that was it. I briefly scanned the room. I had to do this quickly and efficiently if I didn't want to get caught. My mental map showed Dryafar still in his meeting on floor 4, though per the downloaded schedule, it wouldn't last much longer. Walking over to one of the windows, I peeked down. It was quite the fall from here, but that didn't matter. Other than the door, it was the only exit. Reaching out my hand, I could feel the window's invisible force field barrier. With a mental code, I made sure it was unlocked, but didn't remove the barrier yet. Then I turned around and went towards the chair. I sat down and closed my eyes. Immediately, I could sense its mind trying to analyze me, to determine if I was indeed Overseer Dryafar and therefore qualified to use it. Of course I was. At that instant, I scented a certain mindset. The Overseer's surface thought pattern. What it felt like to be him. To think like him. It was a mask. A soul mask over my identity. And it worked. The Keph part of me sunk sneakily into my subconscious, while a temporary false thought pattern came to the surface. Kino Bino. I'd soul masked before, like back on Arubis when I first snagged Z's Octa from her. The stealth mind wasn't just about being a physical sneak. The same functions worked mentally too, and the Naiar systems were all mental. Welcome, Overseer Dryafar. The file system was practically identical to the one accessible from anywhere in Hundexal, aside from the fact that a few more folders were visible here. It appeared within the neon halls of the Monad as a spherical room made of orange and blue lights, thousands of colored squares hovering in the air that represented different file systems. I mentally navigated it with a thought, zooming in on the few that were exclusive to this room. Atraflow records, personnel records, defense systems. Personnel records looked interesting. Might find something valuable in there. But I was short on time. A quick glimpse into the area map showed the Overseer starting to move. He was leaving his meeting. I mentally highlighted the personnel file and began to save its contents for later. Then, I dived straight into the records of the Atraflow. Units of Atra were recorded precisely in the database. Hundexal took it and processed the collective energies of 432 different star systems located throughout this branch of the galaxy. Atra was collected from farm worlds via harvesters, much like the device that sat over my homeworld's moon, and sent through a network of wormholes and solar gateways until it arrived at this station. This past standard year, there had been approximately 557 quadrillion units arriving at the station. About 550 quadrillion went out. Now, that wasn't a problem, or at least I didn't think it was. I peeked a little deeper at what accounted for that difference, mainly maintenance. The biggest portion of the Atra went into maintaining the planetary station itself, a bit less for powering the fleet defending it and neighboring systems, and an even smaller fraction to the residents and workers, to meet their daily needs and provide them with a healthy shared pool of Atra. No help there. I looked to where the Atra went. 42% went straight to the Harmonium headquarters in the Azilikani star system, where it was supposed to be further processed and distributed. 33% was used for the Naiar forces in this galactic sector, further measured out for each fleet and station, including the shared Atra pool every Naiar could draw from. 10% for farm world grid maintenance. The rest was distributed among some highly specific programs. Something called Project Dragonstar, for developing a faster-than-light engine. Teogorade studies. an investigation into the origins of certain photonic monocellular organisms dwelling in deep space, and even something called Operation Repentance, which appeared to be an attempt to bring some of the Vare back into the Nyar Harmonium. I stopped, my mental mini-map alerting me to movement from the Overseer. He was on the elevator, going up. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes, 42 seconds, and counting. Had to hurry this up. I peeked at hundreds of files, doing my best to quickly discern where exactly the Atra was going, and if any of it looked suspicious. Some of it went into weapons development, some into studies of meditation and unlocking different parts of the mind. There were experiments and social programs, Atra going to spies in isolated locales, and a fund that was for paying ransoms for Nyar officers soul-captured in conflicts with the Vare. Scrag, there was even a study on different sexual practices and how they affected Atra production. It was a dizzying array of stuff, but the numbers seemed to be adding up. And while the old Keph was definitely no pro at accounting, my link to the monadic network and my own nanite-infused brain made all those calculations essentially automatic. Except, hidden between the various entries was one file that didn't quite make sense. Something labeled the off-stream. No description. No links to what the program or project was about. Again, a notice from my minimap. Dryfar was on floor 15, headed for this very office. Less than a minute remaining. Back to the off-stream fund. It only took 752 billion Aychuck units. And while that wasn't a huge amount compared to what the station, or all the Nyar stations together, added up to, it was still a scragging insane amount if it went to an individual, or even a small group. And there wasn't even a monad entry about what it was, just a list of its destinations, a set of wormholes that seemed to go on, longer than any other Aychuck pathway, leading somewhere towards Galaxy's edge. That was weird. I zoomed out, quickly doing a scan for prior cycles. The same mysterious fund was there every year. The numbers were always exactly the same amount. A chill ran through me. There were a few Nyar listed having access to the off-stream fund. Overseer Dryafar, several system governors whose names I didn't recognize, along with Sava Harthus, voice of the council. Scrag, that guy, that glassy-winged weirdo, had been the one responsible for the liberation effort on Aruvis. Calm, collected, supremely virtuous, but also a first-class liar. He had pulled some nasty tricks to get Aruvis out of Vare control, concealing info from the enemy and his own folk. This smelled like a conspiracy, especially if he was involved. There was a final officer associated with the project, Agent Tabalnak, his duty listed as enforcement. Uh-oh, the discorporated dead guy himself. I could feel shivers run across me, my Atra agitated at all the connections my mind was wanting to make. I paused, focusing on my physical sight. The door to the room was opening. In an instant, I made sure everything was saved in my local mind. Then I disconnected from the chair, just as the door fully opened, revealing the slender form of Overseer Dryafar standing within. Before he could look my way, I directed most of my remaining Atra outward, turning up my stealth mind to full invisibility, twisting the light around me, and vanishing from the visible spectrum. He stepped into the office. The door closed behind him. I held in my breath and remained in the chair, as still as I could muster. I was unseen, but I could still be heard, felt. The Overseer went to his table and leaned against it. He let out a short breath and shook his head, an annoyed look on his face. A series of rapid symbols appeared above his head. He must still be talking to someone telepathically. I bounded to my feet, as silent as I could muster, took a long step towards the window. With the thought, I willed it to open, air suddenly wafting into the room. Dryfar turned his head, his three eyes scanning over the office. I grasped the window's rim and vaulted myself through. The air whooshed around me as I began to fall, the city streets growing closer by the instant. I plummeted downward, but kept my head, reaching for the hover disk miniaturized in my belt. I placed it at my feet and expanded it to full size with a thought. As I coasted away, out of sight, the invisibility melted from my form, my Atra growing too low to maintain it. Hours later, I was pacing the length of my balcony, The dull white glow of a simulated afternoon was transitioning into the worm-pink tones of the pretend evening, the entire cityscape taking on a rosy hue. Yes, I was pacing. My Atra levels were nearly depleted, causing a mild, feverish fatigue. But my mind was way too excited for the customary low Atra brain fog to set in, so I was pacing, going from one end of the 10-foot wide balcony to the other, occasionally stopping to stretch my limbs on the railing. I had conspiracy on the mind. Whatever was really going on in the cosmic conduit, that was definitely the case. Scragging-spiracy. And this time it probably had nothing to do with the Veer. That mysterious fund, like a permanent Atra tax that nobody knew about, except for a few folks. That had to be what was going missing, I figured, and Tabalnak had been involved with it. Had the others offed him after he found out too much? It explained a lot, but not everything. Those weird sigils I had found, had they been left by the conspirators? Or someone else? So many questions. Did I trust the Nayar overall? Nah, there was something good, noble, beautiful about them. I got the feeling that most of them really believed in all these virtues, these ideals. Zirathra was a decent person, along with Damanya, Jabir, and a handful of others I knew. They were certainly a better choice than the rabidly insane Veer, but scraggot, there was something off about it all. The Nayar had won back Aruvis, liberating it from its oppressive biotech overlords. But they had done it in the most underhanded way, going around their treaties with the Veer by using me, having me find the plans for the hyper-shift engine, just so the Veer could steal it back, then tricking me into sneaking into the Veer base and disabling their shields, just so the Nayar could claim the Veer were holding on to a piece of forbidden tech. They'd taken back the planet, driven off the Veer, and not even violated their precious treaty. And that slimy Scragger Savaharthus was in on this too. Ugh. My hand clenched at the thought of it. Immediately, I could see the visual of a spiral appearing in the corner of my eye. An automatic response from the monad. A program for activating the compassion meditation. Already, the pattern was causing a bit of calm to spread through my system. The muscles of my hand loosening. The feeling of well-being coming over me. It felt almost like a friend reaching out to reassure me. To tell me the Denier Harmonium wasn't so bad after all. Like a hand on my shoulder. All my worries and doubts began to melt away at that, as the spiraling sigils programs massaged my mind. Well, not all my doubts. There was an inner core of me that remained annoyed, doubly annoyed at their dumb, intrusive programs. Ugh, it was all so complicated out here in Nayar land. I groaned, gripping the balcony's rail. I looked out over the edge and then hawked a big loogie off it. Before the spit could hit the ground below, I turned around and sent a thought through the monad, bringing Suvar's canid features into my mind. We have to meet, I sent him. Not more than 3 seconds later, the response came. 1 day, 3 hours. Generator Platform 8. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Space God Memoirs. Space God is written, performed, and produced by A.M. Arctos. Original musical score by Alpha Colors. Various sound effects created by Industrial Strength Records Incorporated. Please support this podcast by following, rating, and sharing on your favorite social media site. For further info on Space God, its creator, and various other opinions, musings, and thoughts, go to www.spacegodmemoirs.com or follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. If you enjoyed the Space God Memoirs, please consider supporting us by becoming a patron. Check out the Patreon link in our description to learn more.